Hello, Arshita. Thank you so much for joining the internal communication series that I run on my blog, Intrascope. As you know, it's been running for a while. Close to 35 plus thought leaders from around the world have participated. This is really to help people understand more about internal comms, the nuances around it, and hear from experts. And that's really the key thing. So, before we begin, it'll be great if you could introduce yourself for our viewers.
Hi, Anisu. Thanks so much for having me on your platform. Privileged to be here. So I'm Harshita Nair. I currently handle strategic communications for Subex Limited. Strategic communication basically entails internal communications and employer branding. So
Mhm.
that's where I'm at. I've had about 17 plus years of experience in the communications field, both internal and external,
Mhm.
both on the corporate and the agency side. In fact, I started my career on the agency side, and I've had the while primarily I've been involved in communications for technology companies. I've had the privilege for brief stints in the BFSI space as well as the healthcare space. So
Fantastic.
it's been a good journey. I love the field, which I'm still in it, but yeah, that's more or less me.
Fantastic. And so let me begin by asking the first question. So, what's your definition or understanding of internal communications?
So internal communications as a branch of the entire communications field itself is, is what most people say it is,
Hmm.
or at least it has been till now, which is the channel or the bridge or the connect between the corporate side of the company and the employees themselves. But I
Hmm.
personally believe it's evolved beyond that now. It's a
Right.
lot more about, rather, it's gone beyond just dissemination of information. It's
Hmm.
gone beyond that to become actually a creator of experiences,
Hmm.
for employees. And internal comms, I believe, having been, having done it for the past few years, I believe it's become a channel or a tool or even a weapon, for want of
Hmm.
a better word, to actually create a company culture or to
Hmm.
transform a company culture. It has that
Right.
power to do it if used in the right manner and used with the right strategy. So internal
Okay.
comms has become a very critical part of an employee's experience at the organization. And I've had experiences where I've seen employees feel debilitated or they feel left out if there isn't a good, robust engine, internal communications engine. So yeah, a very critical aspect of the employee experience is how I see it now.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like the word, creating those experiences. So, how does it get practiced in your organization? So, what's the nuances of that?
So I've had my share of having experienced or driven internal communications in a lot of organizations, but I'll go with the one that I'm currently in because I think that is the best model
Hmm.
today, given today's situation, the kind of employees we deal with, kind of mindsets we deal with. Communication strategy, what you need to it, which is translate goals or you translate leadership messages, corporate strategy, business strategy to your employees down the line to make them understand what it is that you do and why it's relevant to them. That I believe today has to be backed with also the experience part of it, where it's
Correct.
the way I see it, the first part, which is the formal communication, is more about the dissemination of information. But how
Hmm.
do you engage employees as well? So that I
Correct.
believe needs to be coupled with, giving employees a voice to talk. It's
Hmm.
a down to top kind of
Correct.
a channel where
Correct.
you give employees their voice, a platform to speak out, a platform to give their feedback, to give perspectives, and
Correct.
sometimes it's very invaluable in when you're working towards an employee experience because if you don't know what the pulse of your employees are, how are you going to communicate to them? So
Fantastic.
in
Yeah.
our, at Subex, that's what we do. We have a dual model under the umbrella of internal communications, where we have the intercom, which is our formal channel for communication, which talks
Hmm.
about business updates, leadership communication, and all of that. And we also have a slightly light-hearted stuff, but with a very serious intent,
Right.
where what we call the Subex Culture Club, where we run engagement programs right from community learning. So we have people within the organization who provide skills to their colleagues, lessons to their colleagues across different skills. Or we look at our, activities centered around different festivals that come up, or give the employees an opportunity to also come and talk about their career aspirations, their their little successes in life, and so that gives them also a feeling of belonging. So I think it's a dual model, and that's what works best for any organization.
Fantastic. And can you give an example, I mean, of a campaign or initiative that you were really proud of, where, what was really the challenge? What was the, initiative you came up with? How did you see the impact of it? So if you could just articulate that.
So again, I'm going to go with my current experience, because in all my previous roles, it's been more about driving those communication initiatives, meeting strategic objectives of the organization, and so on and so forth. But with SUBEX, it's been a very invigorating, very fulfilling kind of an experience, simply because I was brought in to sort of create, develop, and drive the entire communications channel for them internally. So it was like germinating something and seeing it grow, helping to create that. So that's been a very, very nice experience. And SUBEX currently is going through a transformation stroke growth phase. So to align that with your communication, which becomes a very, very critical part, if you're going to expect your employees to support you in that growth, it becomes extremely important as a stream, as a function to work on. So I've had the privilege and the blessings of my leadership, and that's worked really well, because without that, any internal communication strategy just falls flat. So I've had the backing of it, I've had the support of my leaders, and that has worked really well. And so what has happened is we've, on a multimodal level, we have done the formal communication route, where we've got CEO messages going on, we've got open houses. I mean, these are pretty much vanilla things for normal internal communication initiatives, but at SUBEX, where there was nothing at all, it was like a clean slate. So to have to started off all of that, driven it, see it becoming successful, and what's I think most fulfilling is the fact that we've also had feedback, and we know that it has created an impact. People are a lot more tuned in. People are a lot more, they feel a lot more connected to the organization. And in some cases, which is, I think, a brilliant outcome, is that the commitment levels have also gone up. Because now there's a transparency, there's a communication channel. They know what is going on, besides their daily, besides the work that they do daily. So I think that's a very, very fulfilling experience for me in the last 1 year plus. So that's
great. And what, according to you, is the biggest challenge that internal communicators face today?
I'm hoping it's changing, and I see somewhere it is, but it's how the rest of the organization perceives it, right? And I'm going to go back to what I said some time back, and that can only change with leadership, backing, and support. And traditionally in communications, or even the support functions for that matter, are not given that importance to say that okay, it's a communication thing, it's not time bound, I can do it later. It's not really, unfortunately, or until recently. I think the trend is changing now after all these years, but until recently, that's how it was looked at, and which is why the merit or the actual impact that it can create was diluted. That challenge is something I think we communicators unfortunately don't have a quick fix for it. It has to happen over a period of time, over a period of experiences, and a few months, maybe years, unless people see the value of it. So unless that happens, it's a little difficult. It's not like, if at the end of the day, we are a cost center. Let's face it, right? We don't bring in revenues. We help probably motivate enough to bring revenues, but we don't directly bring in revenues. So that itself becomes like puts you on the third or fourth priority list in an employee's or even an organization's priorities. So that, I think, is the biggest challenge. But having said that, like I said, I think it's changing slowly. People are realizing the value of it. I think the recent pandemic situation has become sort of like our booster, because people now, or companies now, realize how important it is to communicate with your employees in a crisis, or a force majeure kind of a situation like this. Because of the uncertainty, because employees feel so apprehensive about things. So communication becomes your only method or channel to keep that motivation going. And so unless you see the value of it, I think it's going to become slightly easier for us communicators, but I think we're getting there. So yeah.
Okay. And related to that, what do you see as the biggest opportunity at this stage? Harshita, I think you've turned off. Yeah, you're back here. So did you hear the question, or do you want me to repeat that?
Sorry, no, I got a call and I had to.
Okay.
I didn't hear the question.
Yeah. So the question is, related to the challenge. What's the opportunity you see at this stage?
The opportunity actually is also the fact that today, communicators, and I'm saying in general, not just external or internal communicators, have a lot of tools and channels that they can leverage. It's not like the earlier days where, it was just for external communication, it was just a press release or a press conference or a media interview. Right. Or for internal communications, it was like an open house or some communication that went out from the intercom handle. There are so many things nowadays. There's social media. There are desktop apps that you can use. You can have bespoke programs for targeted audiences. So the canvas to explore options is a lot more now, right. And very intuitive and very instant. And having we deal with the millennial and Gen Z generation who right. who are still driven by instant gratification. Their boredom levels are very high, not like some of us who have been here for years. So to deal with them and to keep them engaged is quite a challenge, at the same time an opportunity, because because they're also present on so many of these mediums platforms. So the creativity of it, I think, is a lot more now. In terms of how you can communicate, how you can engage with them, how do you craft your message to make sure that they get the right impact out of it, or that they're able to draw, the relevance for them from these platforms. So that, I think, is an opportunity, and that's a great. I think it's a great space to be in right now because of the various, avenues you have to explore stuff like that. So yeah. And you mentioned adding value from an internal comms perspective. What are some of the tips and techniques you have to share in terms of how can internal communicators add more value to the business? I think how we can add value, or to create that a sense among the others who don't understand communications of why it is important and why it is significant for you to look into it keenly, is that so I learned this, you learn these things on the job, right? So I learned this, in the span of my 17 plus year career, that you have to bring in a context and a relevance to it, right? That involves, that involves knowing not just your audience, but the space you operate in. Many of us in our career, take it for granted to say that, or in fact, many other people also say that things like, fields like communications or support functions like HR, marketing, or other are agnostic of industry. Right. Which to an extent is true, but you can only make a difference if you go beyond that. Yeah. So if I had to speak on from my experience, having worked in technology as well as BFSI as well as healthcare, I realized that unless you understand the pulse of the industry itself, about what ticks employees, what ticks them off, what engages them, what helps them understand, see it from your perspective. Unless you have that context, your communication can just be okay, it's there. It's not impactful. It's not taken in very well or very effectively. So, for example, we used to run programs when I was working for a healthcare company where we used to do internal communications. One program we used to run frequently was a external speaker kind of a program where we would invite people from outside, and these are patients. It's a healthcare company. We would call patients who were recovered from various illnesses that we were working on. This was a clinical research organization. So many of the areas that we used to work on, we used to have patients come over outside. I mean, it could be anybody, right? Come outside and talk about their experiences. It was a great choice because they relate to it, because they connect to it. Correct. So in my BFSI space, I was working for an insurance company, and the task was to get, as is any other, BFSI space, any kind of company in the BFSI space, it was about increasing your numbers in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, your insurance policies, right? So we ran a contest like a it's a city-wise contest to say this month who clocked in the maximum policies, and we did it like a sports event, the whole league. That again resonated so well with them. So it's and technology companies, again, so you can't tell a coder, you have to talk to a coder in a different way. You talk to an insurance agent in a different way. You talk to a clinical practitioner in a different way. So you have to know the context and the relevance of how what you're going to say is going to make an effect, have an effect on them. That I think is something that really helps create the value for internal communications. And that is where people realize that, if you have practitioners who know this, we need to work with them very closely. And at the leadership level, if they recognize that early, it's very good for the organization itself to build that, like I said, culture, the way we work, and all of that.
Fantastic. And what, according to you, are some of the skills that internal communicators need? I mean, or what should they develop? Because I think internal comms has evolved over the years, and like you mentioned, there are millennials now at the workplace. So, what's your sense of the skills required?
So obviously the regular skills like good language skills, the ability to develop content, both written and graphic, an eye for design, an eye for semantics and context and all of that. But I think nowadays, and that's why internal comms has elevated itself from what it was as just a dissemination function. What is really important is, in my opinion and experience, is people engagement, empathy. Then comes your creativity and how you can map that. Because nowadays it's all about how you can connect. It's all about storytelling. It's about how you make it relevant, right? And unless you have that ability to engage with people down the line or your employees, and unless you have the ability to empathize with them, to know what they go through, their daily life, not be able to communicate as effectively as you could. In terms of, like I said, creating that experience or building or transforming the culture of the organization in some cases and stuff like that. So definitely people engagement or engaging with people and empathy is something that they really, I think these are two very critical skills or skills you need to develop if you don't already have them as communicators.
Fantastic. Yeah, and those are great points. I mean, because you're talking of soft skills and the mix of hard skills as well. So great point. And there are a lot of these youngsters who want to join communication because, of course, it sounds very glamorous and all that. So, what's your advice for youngsters who want to get into internal comms and make a career in this domain?
So, firstly, I'd say I encourage all of those who want to get into it. Please do, because, like I said, this is a great space to be in and a great time to be in this space because of the plethora of options you have today. Skills wise, like I said, try to develop these two, which is empathy and people engagement, because and a really effective communications, especially internal communications program, can only happen with those. But the other, I think, other than that, I would just say, I mean, the good part about communications per se, internal or external, is the fact that it lends itself to a lot of creativity. It lends itself to, connects to a lot of building those relationships. I think communications is one field where relationships are paramount, right? So build on those skills. If you feel you want to, while it seems glamorous on the outside, like, you and I know that at the back end we're always looked on. Okay, she's come something like that. I don't have time for this right now, and all of that. So we know all of that, but you have to battle with all that, and you know that only when you come into the field. But the good part about it is that when you have a campaign that has been effective and impactful, it's very fulfilling. So that is something I would like to leave with the youngsters. So, it's glamorous. It can have its pain points, but if you can build these two skills then and come into the field and develop it, it's great. And as with any other, skill, it doesn't happen overnight. You'll have your fair share of learnings. You'll have your fair share of failures and successes. As they say in the PR world, you're as good as your last story. So, but then it's a very good journey, I would say. It also, to me personally, it's also helped me develop perspectives on life. Because you meet so many people, you hear so many stories. I think what drives, or why somebody who's very interested or very keen on people interactions and people management and dealing with people, I think they love this industry, because that's the one thing you get a lot of.
Right. And I've been asking this question to most the women leaders mostly. So as a woman, what's your advice for women professionals at the workplace? What should they be doing differently or thinking differently? What's your sense from that perspective? It's not really a gender thing, but I just wanted to have your point of view.
Sure. So I'll go out on a limb and say this, but women actually have a bit of a head start already, because the skills that I spoke about, which are people management or people engagement and empathy. No offense to the men out there, but we do have a little more of it than the men do, and that already automatically propels you to slightly superior position from that sense, because
Mm.
you're able to understand and also empathize, and also then craft to say that, how do I make it relevant for this person, because you have
Mm.
that mindset already. As women, we are built like that, thankfully.
Correct. Yeah.
So that is a good thing. But what I must also add is that given the way where we are now, and because of the technology prowess in the industry itself, and the
Mm.
fact that it is so dynamic, and it is, it lends itself to so much of creativity, men are getting into it.
Mm.
In a very very big way. You're a fine example, Anisu, yourself. So they're getting into in a very big way, and so we have a lot of competition. So so what I would urge women to or how I feel they could propel themselves in that in a career like this would be to also get out of some of the stereotypes that we have around women, right? So okay, she's a woman, so I can sort of not bully her, but she'll be a little more empathetic, she'll be a little more sensitive to me, all of that. What we need to understand is, and what we as women need to do is draw a balance. One is
Mm.
to continue that that approach of
Correct.
being empathetic and people management. At the same time, be very vigilant and careful and cognizant of our goals. We
Right.
have a certain goal to achieve through internal comms. That doesn't mean
Right.
you take things lying down. Being empathetic is very different from taking things lying down,
Right.
right? So you also ensure that you also position yourself such that you are providing value. You're not just there. You're not an envelope pusher. You're not a content writer. You're much
Mm.
more than that. You're a
Right.
consultant. You're
Right.
you're here to help people realize the value of what it means to communicate relevantly.
Mm.
What channel you use, whatever tools you use, whatever platforms you use. But
Right.
as women, we have the advantage of having those sensitivities. We should
Mm.
play up, but also
Yeah.
not fight the fact that you're also at the end of the day a professional. You also
Right.
have your KRAs to complete. So make sure you
Yeah.
don't lose, but at the
Right.
same time leverage the fact that you are a woman, and thereby a little more sensitive.
Great inputs. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be much valued by the readers. So, so again, you mentioned, you alluded to COVID-19, the pandemic, and how it's impacted the workplace. Now, what's your sense of what are some of the things that are going to change for internal communicators going forward, related to where we are? Because apart from the remote working part, and what else do you think is going to change for the function?
So one, like I said earlier as well, one thing that's boosted or bolstered the entire aura around internal communication is the fact that now people realize that communication is a very critical function when it comes to a crisis or a situation like this. What we did at Subex, in fact, just to let you know, is that we opened up communication channels, and our team was working like day in and day out, even if it was an update or two updates per day, to say that because to inform employees about what's going on, what is our stance, what you need to do, because in
Right.
such a time nobody knows anything. The
Right.
uncertainty is looming so large.
Right.
Everybody is in a state of flux, in a state of apprehension, in a state of tension.
Right.
And your workplace becomes like the fulcrum of your existence, because if I can't go back to work, what do I do? Do I lose my job? Am I going to is my salary going to be cut? Can I work from home? I don't know. So there are so many questions in the employee's mind. And after a point, because you have again the prevalence and presence of so many news sources, whether it's your WhatsApp group or your Facebook, and most of them, as fake news is a big business nowadays, right? So at one point, internal communications or communications from your organization becomes your one central source of truth.
Mm.
Okay, my company said this, so I'll believe it and I'll do this. It
Mm.
becomes like that. I'll even go to the extent to say that in some cases it becomes like the gospel, right? Okay, my
Yeah.
company said this, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that has elevated internal communications value itself a
Mm.
lot in this pandemic. What's going to change? I think till such time that most people are saying till we get the vaccine, we'll see what happens and all of that. Till such time, and I think even beyond, it's going to be easily a year or two.
Yeah.
Till this uncertainty, till this whole wave of apprehension of what every day is a different date nowadays. So
Right.
until that
Right.
happens, I think internal comms in that journey will become a very very dominant part of how you are going to approach your life, or your in the next
Yeah.
few months. And
Right.
that I think will put it in a position. In fact, my I've heard my colleagues in different in the same industry but in different companies, and my leaders themselves saying that we didn't realize that it was so important for us to communicate, and thankfully we did, because otherwise it would have been hell would have broken loose. So I think it's the fact that now people realize that internal communication is a very important aspect of a company's not just culture or employee experience. It also becomes like the backbone of your working style.
Right.
In terms of how do you approach a situation like this? Communication is the only channel that you can do this through. I mean, we are a company of about 1,000+ people. There are companies, 10 times that kind of a workforce. How do you engage a workforce like that without a communications channel? So definitely, it's been very good. I think the only industry that's sort of benefited from this entire pandemic is probably the communications industry.
And so what's one of the trends that you spot in internal comms or in the world today, which you feel is related to the comms function? Anything that comes to your mind?
I think it's one. There are many actually, because of the whole way the world is changing with the VUCA world and the digital world and all of that. There are many smaller trends and changes and transformations you see from the traditional communications initiatives that we used to run. But I think one thing that really stands out is it's no longer about this is my message, this is how I'm going to communicate. It's a collaborative effort. Right. I mean, I run programs where we have a team that works on communications, but I run programs where I in fact involve employees from different functions. Okay, you give me your feedback. What do you think we should communicate? It's very collaborative now. It's not, there's no one size fits all, or there's no this pedestal kind of a position to say, what, I'm saying this, so you better listen. It's not that anymore. It's actually challenging and at the same time very nice, because it opens up your mind to so many other things, perspectives that probably I missed out, but I got from somebody, a technical guy, So that I think is changing a lot, because it's becoming a lot more collaborative. Sometimes you get the best insights from the most unexpected corners, so that's becoming good. And it's nice that many youngsters today are very involved or very keen to get themselves involved in some of these initiatives. So it's more driven by the employee than driven to the employee. I think that is changing.
Yeah, I really like the fact about co-creating, the solution and the content and the communication with people. So that's a great idea. And as we wrap up, what's that one thing that if you were to look back on your career, is there one aspect that you'd like to change about internal comms, and what would that be?
Change. I've not really changed, because I've had a very good journey, and I've loved every failure, every success, every situation and initiative I've run and driven. Not change, but it's something I feel sad about is the fact that emails are just going out. I mean, we used to depend so much on emails, and not just with communications and all of that. They're just dying out. If you ask me, much earlier, much ahead of their time. But well, that's the truth. I mean, nobody wants to read emails anymore. I get a lot of feedback and comments to say, "Oh, you sent a mail, I didn't see it." I said, "It's an email. It came into your inbox. How could you not see it?" So anyway, so that I think I feel sad about that. But at the same time, like I said, that is also an opportunity, because there are so many other avenues now where you can craft your messages, tune them to suit that platform. But I think I'm an old school girl, so I still believe email is something that people should look at. But that, the dying art, and something you have to adapt to. I mean, there's no, changing that. So yeah.
Fantastic. This has really been great. It's been really fantastic talking to you. It's been fantastic insights. I'm sure this will be loved by all our viewers. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Harshita.
Thank you, Anisu. Thank you very much. And I hope people are able to draw some inspiration from what I said, because the experience is great. So if you want to get into it, feel free. So yeah, thanks, Anisu.
All right, great.